Yanis Varoufakis is a PhD holder in microeconomics, former minister of Greece in economics and finance and all that. Um, Man, this dude is so bold. I mean, he's just speaking some things that you can never hear from any mainstream media, and he's just speaking it as it is. Um, just learn some truth here, some facts. It's crazy. All right, check it out.
This new Cold War against China must be uh, addressed with all the seriousness that we can muster, because it is a clear and present threat to humanity. And it's also particularly in name. It is perhaps the definition of stupidity mixed with hypocrisy, because unlike the original Cold War between the West and the Soviet Union, here we have a remarkable set of events and facts. Remember 2008, when capitalism imploded and it was on its last legs until it was saved by two forces. The first force was, of course, the Federal Reserve in the United States, along with other central banks. They printed money, mountain ranges of money as if there is no tomorrow, to refloat the financial markets. And they did that. But at the same time, zombified capitalism. And we have the crisis that we now see accelerating with the pandemic. But okay, so the Fed, one pillar that saved capitalism, financialized capitalism. The second pillar, one word, China. Without China, capitalism would not have survived, because it was at the time when aggregate demand, investment, consumption was just falling like a rock through the sky in the West, that China pumped up its investment massively. From an already very high 35% of national income, they reached more than 50%. And they did it for their own purposes and in order to create a cushion by which to absorb the shocks so that the people of China do not suffer the shock wave of the international financial crash. But in so doing, they saved capitalism. There's no doubt of that. Look at Germany. Germany had cut its nose to spite its face by, in 2010, imposing huge austerity on the rest of Europe. My country was the first country, the first domino to fall, and bailouts for the German bankers. So socialism for the bankers and huge austerity for the rest of Europe, which meant they couldn't sell stuff to the rest of Europe because the rest of Europe didn't have any money to buy German exports. And who bought the German exports? The Chinese. It was through this massive stimulus in China that Chinese exports maintained themselves. And, Mrs. Merkel can now exit the scene as the chancellor, the Iron Chancellor, who is claimed by everybody in the liberal press to be a great success story. Without China, she would not have remained in the chancellery. Similarly, American capitalism would not have been stabilized after 2009, despite the great efforts of the Fed, if it was not for the Chinese economies pumping up aggregate demand globally. So there's a great deal of hypocrisy. They make most of their stuff, the Americans, in China. They import it to the United States, import it to the rest of the world. They claim gargantuan, gigantic profit margins because of China. And then President Trump comes around and creates circumstances for a Cold War, which Biden continues. Now, it is never a good idea to explain what the imperialist powers are doing on the basis of stupidity. There's no doubt that they're stupid. They've always been stupid, and they have been very nostalgic as well. The past. Look at now the AUKUS deal between Australia and Britain, and France being left out, and so on. It smacks of idiocy, especially given that they are investing in submarines. Who cares about submarines? They are, the weapon of the past. But set this aside. It's never a good idea to explain why they do on the basis of their stupidity. It's far better to try to explain it on the basis of their interests and of their greed. and of what it is that drives the large corporations. In the case of this new Cold War, what explains this immense hypocrisy? Ignoring the fact that China saved them in 2008, and iPods, you see how old I am, iPhones are being produced in China. The reason why Trump started this new Cold War and Biden is continuing it is the attempt to encroach into two important areas in China, an imperialist encroachment in China, financial one, economic one, industrial one. The first one is big tech. The only country in the world, the European Union is notorious for having failed to do this. The only country in the world that has managed to create competitors for Amazon, for Google, for Facebook, for Twitter, for all that, is China. They preserved the space, the digital space, and they've built conglomerates of their own that can compete with big tech. And because big tech is where, together with crypto money, the future of value extraction is going to be determined. The Trump circle, who were not as dumb as Trump was, they were indeed very, very smart, realized that they need to take over, perpetrate, appropriate large chunks of Chinese big tech and Chinese digital technologies, especially now with the digital renminbi, a combination of digital currency, which is going to be the future all over the world, and the Chinese have stolen a march for many years from this. They want effectively to take it over. And of course, finance. This is a long strategy by Wall Street to penetrate the financial markets. I hope the Chinese government does not reduce the capital controls and barriers. I've seen some movement towards that. Don't do it. This is my message to my Chinese friends. This is what this new Cold War is about, taking over China's big tech and finance, because that's where the power is going to rest from now on. Now, for us in Europe, it is absolutely idiotic, inane, to get caught up in this Cold War. We've got to resist this tooth and nail. Now, let me make one thing absolutely clear, because here we may have disagreements. I have no doubt that if I were Chinese and lived in China, I would probably be imprisoned. I am a very powerful critic of the Chinese Communist Party's authoritarianism. I supported the Hong Kong Polytechnic students because I always support students when they're being beaten up and gassed by the police. I support the cause of the Uyghurs. I support the Marxist scholars at Beijing University who tried to educate trade unions to Marxism when they were sidelined. But that is no reason for not standing up and shouting from the rooftops, no Cold War with China. China is not our enemy. Our enemy is authoritarianism. Our enemy is oligarchy. And we in Europe have no right to criticize China, given that we are living in an oligarchic regime, in a regime where democracy is a joke. As Wolfgang Schäuble, the then finance minister of Germany, told me in very explicit terms, when in my first meeting of Europe's finance ministers, he said to me, in no uncertain terms, democracy should not be allowed to change economic policy. Well, it should and it must, and part of the struggle for democratizing Europe is to stop any new Cold War with China. Thank you.